Right, so get this. We're diving into a story today that sounds straight out of a horror movie.
Oh, I love those.
So picture this. World War I, 1915, Osowick Fortress. German forces are launching an all-out attack, right?
Okay, got it.
And their secret weapon is this terrifying new technology, poison gas.
Ah,
Now imagine this. As the gas clouds, clear figures emerge, and it's like straight out of the nightmare. They're coughing up blood, faces are contorted, and get this, they're charging right at the German lines.
oh, wow.
This is the story of, get this, the attack of the dead men.
Uh-huh.
Was this a real-life zombie attack, or is there like a more rational explanation? That's what we're going to find out.
Well, what's really captivating about this whole story is that it's actually, rooted in a real historical event. Osowick Fortress, which is now in northeastern Poland, was a strategically, vital location. And the Germans were really determined to seize it.
Okay.
And their weapon of choice, this deadly concoction of chlorine and bromine gas.
Okay, wait, stop right there before we get to the attack itself. I need some more context. What exactly were these gases and what made them so deadly?
Okay, so chlorine gas, when it's inhaled, reacts with moisture in the lungs, and it forms hydrochloric acid.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So imagine the searing pain, the feeling of your lungs burning from the inside out. It would cause violent coughing, difficulty breathing, and in severe cases, asphyxiation.
Oh, wow.
Bromine, now that one wasn't used as commonly, but it would have amplified these effects. So it's like adding another layer of just pain and suffering.
So not a quick and painless death.
Right. Exactly.
These gases were designed to just inflict maximum suffering.
Precisely. And beyond the physical agony, there's the psychological impact.
Yeah.
Just imagine being a soldier in the trenches, seeing this greenish-yellow cloud rolling towards you, knowing that within moments you'll be fighting for every breath.
But yeah.
The Germans were banking on this fear, hoping to just completely demoralize the Russian defenders.
So on August 6th, 1915, the Germans unleashed this horrifying gas attack on Osowick Fortress.
Yes.
What happened next? Did the Russians succumb to this terrifying new weapon?
Well, that initial attack was devastating. Thousands of Russian soldiers were just incapacitated, overwhelmed by the gas.
Okay.
The Germans, confident of victory, began to advance towards the fortress, but then something unexpected happened, something that sent shivers down their spines.
Wait. Is this the part where the dead men rise?
Yeah.
Tell me everything.
From the depths of those gas-choked trenches, figures began to emerge. They were barely recognizable as human. They were coughing up blood, their faces contorted in agony, their skin and uniforms ravaged by the corrosive chemicals.
Okay, so you're painting a pretty vivid picture here. These weren't literal zombies, but they must have looked absolutely terrifying. But who were these figures? Were they somehow immune to the gas?
Not immune, no. But some individuals just have a higher tolerance for certain toxins. Perhaps some had slightly better gas masks, or they were positioned in areas where the gas concentration wasn't as dense. Whatever the reason, a small number of Russian soldiers managed to survive that initial onslaught, though they were severely injured.
So what did these gas-stricken soldiers do? Did they retreat? Did they surrender?
You might expect them to just collapse, surrender in the face of such overwhelming odds. But remember, we're talking about soldiers defending their homeland, fueled by adrenaline and perhaps even a sense of vengeance. These men, driven by just a desperate need to survive, they launched a counterattack.
Hold on, they charged toward the advancing German troops.
Yeah.
While still suffering the effects of the gas. That's incredible.
It was an act of sheer desperation, a last stand by men who just refused to give up. They stumbled forward, coughing, wheezing, their bayonets fixed. Now put yourself in the shoes of a German soldier witnessing this. You've just unleashed a weapon of unimaginable horror, and the enemy, seemingly unaffected by it, is rising from the literal fog of war to attack.
I can only imagine the terror. This wasn't just a military engagement. It was like something out of a nightmare.
Exactly. And that psychological impact, that primal fear of the unknown, that played a crucial role in what happened next.
Okay, don't leave me hanging. What was the outcome of this counterattack? Did these dead men actually manage to repel the German advance?
Well, that's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive. But before we get there, think about this. What does this event tell us about the power of human resilience, about the ways in which war can push individuals to their absolute limits? We'll be right back to explore those questions and delve deeper into the aftermath of this incredible and some might say unbelievable event.
Okay, so you left us hanging. These gas-stricken Russian soldiers are charging the German lines.
Yeah.
What happened?
You're not going to believe this. The German soldiers, they were facing what they thought was like an army of the undead. They panicked, just completely panicked. Ranks broke, and they retreated. Yeah, in total disarray. That counterattack, improbable as it seemed, it was successful.
So this wasn't just like a desperate last stand.
Yeah.
It actually like turned the tide of the battle.
It did. The psychological impact of witnessing these figures seemingly just totally impervious to the horrors they had unleashed, it was too much for them.
Right.
Just too much to handle. It undermined their morale, shattered their sense of order, and led to their retreat.
It makes you wonder if this event would be as legendary if it weren't for that, like, element of poison gas. I mean, throughout history, we've seen so many examples of soldiers fighting through unimaginable pain and adversity.
Absolutely. But you're right. What sets this event apart, what really captured like the imagination is that visual element.
Yeah.
The horrific appearance of those gas-stricken soldiers, their distorted features, their labored breathing, their blood-soaked uniforms. You know, these vivid details, that's what gave rise to that whole legend of the dead men.
So the underlying human resilience might be just as remarkable in other historical examples, but it's the zombie aspect that makes the story stick.
Exactly. It's the intersection of human courage and the macabre. That blurring of the lines between reality and horror, that's what makes it so compelling. But we can't forget, behind the legend, you know, real men who fought and suffered. This event forces us to confront, like, the extremes of human experience, acknowledge the depths of both our capacity for suffering and our ability to just persevere.
Now, you mentioned earlier that the Germans were banking on the psychological impact of that gas attack. Do you think they underestimated the psychological impact it would have on their own troops?
That's a great question. It's possible that they didn't fully anticipate the sheer terror their weapon would inspire, not just in the enemy, but in themselves. The psychological effects of war, they're complex, often unpredictable.
So we've established this wasn't a literal zombie attack, but
Yeah.
the legend persists. Why do you think this story in particular has resonated so strongly, like in our culture?
I think it taps into a primal fear, a fear of the unknown, of the unstoppable, of the boundary between life and death being breached. The image of the dead rising, whether literally or figuratively, is just a powerful one. It's haunted humanity for centuries.
And the imagery of the gas attack,
Yeah.
you know, the distorted figures emerging from the fog, it lends itself perfectly to that kind of horror narrative. It's like straight out of a nightmare.
Exactly. It blurs the lines between history and horror, reality and nightmare. This event gives us a tangible image for something we've always feared. You know, the idea of the dead coming back to life, driven by some unknown force. It's a fear that's just deeply ingrained in human psychology. You can see it in countless myths and legends, you know, featuring undead creatures from vampires to zombies. These stories have been around for centuries across different cultures, suggesting that they tap into something fundamental about the human experience.
So how has the attack of the dead men specifically influenced, you know, like our modern zombie lore?
Well, it reinforces this idea of a trigger event, something that transforms people into something monstrous.
Yeah.
In this case, it was the poison gas, but in other zombie narratives, it might be, you know, a virus, a parasite, or some other kind of contaminant. It's like that element of transformation, of something human becoming something other, that's crucial to the zombie mythos.
And the attack of the dead men, you know, provides a real-world historical example of that kind of transformation,
Yeah.
which makes it all the more unsettling. It's like a bridge between the realm of folklore and the reality of human history.
You got it. And it also makes you think about how we use these kinds of stories to process our fears and anxieties. Zombies, in a way, they represent the ultimate loss of control, you know, like the breakdown of order and civilization. The Attack of the Dead Men, set against the backdrop of World War I, which was itself a time of unprecedented global upheaval, speaks to those anxieties in a very powerful way.
So this event from 1915 is still relevant today because it taps into these deep-seated fears that we continue to grapple with as a society.
Yeah.
The fear of losing control, the fragility of human civilization, the horrors that can be unleashed when technology is used for destructive purposes.
Absolutely. And beyond those broader themes, it also reminds us of the enduring power of perception. What the German soldiers saw that day, what they believed they were facing, it played a crucial role in their retreat. It wasn't a supernatural force, but the fear it inspired was very real. And this raises an interesting question. How much of what we perceive as reality is shaped by our own fears and expectations?
That's something to think about for sure. But before we get too philosophical, let's bring this back to the story at hand. This event has become part of, like, wartime folklore, but how has it been portrayed in, like, popular culture? Have you seen any examples that stand out?
It's been referenced in books, films, video games, even music. There's a Swedish heavy metal band called Sabaton. They even wrote a song about it. It's become kind of a shorthand for the horrors of war, for the idea that there are some things out there that just defy explanation, that tap into our deepest fears.
It's fascinating how this event, which was rooted in such specific historical circumstances, has managed to transcend its time and place, become this universal symbol of horror and resilience.
And that's the power of a good story. It can take a specific event with all its nuances and complexities and distill it into something that speaks to a broader human experience. But even beyond the story itself, there's the legacy of the attack of the dead men. It's a story that continues to fascinate and inspire. It reminds us of the depths of human courage and the enduring power of the human spirit.
Okay, so we've discussed the history, the psychology, the cultural impact. But what does all of this mean for us today? Why should we care about a story that happens over 100 years ago in a war that's long over?
Well, there are several key takeaways here. First, it's a stark reminder of the human cost of war, not just in terms of lives lost, but also in terms of the psychological and emotional toll it takes on those who fight. The scars of war, both physical and mental, they can linger long after the battles have ended.
All right, so we're back and ready to jump into this, like, lasting legacy, the attack of the dead men. We talked about the history, the science, the psychology, but, like, how has this event from 1915 continued to capture our imaginations for, like, over a century?
I know, it's fascinating. This real-life event with its, like, horrifying imagery and themes of resilience and fear, it's, like, become almost a blueprint for our, like, modern fascination with zombies and the undead.
It's like it provided a tangible image for, our deepest fears, the dead rising, unstoppable and driven by some, like, unknown force. Do you think if the attack hadn't involved poison gas with its, like, visually disturbing effects, the story would have become such a, like, cultural touchstone?
Yeah. That's a really interesting question. Hard to say for sure, but, I think those visuals are a big part of what makes this story so gripping. That image of those soldiers, their features, like, distorted by the gas, struggling forward despite their injuries, it's, like, horrifying and strangely compelling at the same time.
It's like something out of a nightmare, but, like, rooted in a real historical event.
Yeah.
And that blend of reality and horror, it's like potent fuel for the imagination.
For sure. And this imagery, feeds directly into our fascination with zombies and the undead. Those themes of transformation, of something human becoming something other, they're central to, like, zombie lore. And the attack of the dead men, with its poison gas as, like, a transforming agent, almost acts as a bridge between the realm of, folklore and the reality of war.
It's like a real-world example of something we've always feared, right? That loss of control, the breakdown of order, the blurring of the line between life and death, and all of that set against the backdrop of World War I, a time of, like, unprecedented global upheaval.
You got it. Zombie narratives often explore those themes of, like, social collapse and the fragility of civilization, and the attack of the dead men happening during one of the most devastating conflicts in human history just amplifies those anxieties.
So it's not just some, like, spooky story from the past, right?
Yeah.
It's tapping into some very real and present fears that we still grapple with today.
Absolutely. And beyond that fear, there's also the enduring theme of human resilience. These soldiers, facing unimaginable suffering, they found the strength to fight back, to defy the odds. And that message of courage in the face of adversity resonates deeply no matter the time period.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about the psychological impact of the event on both the German and the Russian soldiers, but how has the story of the attack of the dead men been portrayed in, like, popular culture?
Well, it's been referenced in books, films, video games, even music. There's a Swedish heavy metal band called Sabaton. They even wrote a song about it. It's, like, become shorthand for the horrors of war and for the idea that there are things out there that defy, like, easy explanation.
It's amazing how this event, like, rooted in a specific time and place, has managed to transcend those, like, limitations and become this universal symbol of horror, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit.
Right. And that's the power of a good story. It can take a specific event with all its complexities and distill it into something that speaks to a broader human experience. The Attack of the Dead Men, it forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about ourselves, about the limits of human endurance,
Yeah.
and about the ways in which we make sense of the world around us.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope our listeners will take away from, exploring the Attack of the Dead Men?
Well, I hope it encourages them to look at history and even current events with a critical eye, to question the narratives we're presented with, to look beyond the surface, and to consider the psychological forces at play, especially in times of conflict. Because sometimes the most unbelievable stories, they reveal the most profound truths about ourselves and our world.
Well said. And on that note, we leave you with this thought. What other, seemingly unbelievable events from history might hold, hidden truths and profound lessons for us today? Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.